Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, our speakers. Good afternoon, attendees who accepted our invitation to this webinar. I am Riham Jafari from ActionAid Palestine. I am Riham Jafari from ActionAid Palestine, working as communication and advocacy coordinator with my colleague Suraida from APS Alianza, a Spanish organization that we are delighted and honored to have this webinar on occasion of International Women's Day. And with the increasing violence against Palestinian women, and to tackle the issues of and agendas of security and peace agenda in Palestine, and issues of accountability and impunity to Israeli crimes against Palestinian and Palestinian women. And we will listen in this webinar to expert speakers from Palestinians who bear the suffering of this severe occupation and of severe illegal occupation. So we want to organize this webinar after 23 years of declaring UN Security Council resolution on 1325 that call for protecting women, that call for involving women in peace and security agenda and efforts at all levels. But when the UN resolution comes to Palestinians, there is no clear and severe and strict and decisive mechanism adopted for enforcing these UN resolutions and these declarations as other UN resolutions that call for the respect of human rights. And this webinar will provide gendered analysis on the meaning of this resolution for the Palestinian women and how the challenges face the implementation of this resolution. We will have speakers from different places in Palestine, reflecting different suffering, reflecting different challenges. We will listen to the struggle of women in Jerusalem, in Shafat, in Jenin refugee camps. We will listen to voices from Gaza, highlighting the impact of a blockade on women. We will be honored to have the family of Shireen Abu Aqla, the Al Jazeera correspondent who was killed by Israeli army while performing her duties in Jenin camp, and highlighting how the Palestinian families, how the Palestinian people seek justice and accountability in national and international fora. Welcome all. Thank you for accepting our call and our invitation to this webinar. And we are very thankful to you. And we are very sorry for some technical issues that are happening now. But at the end of the day, it is a simple contribution from our organization to raise the voices of our women. Welcome all. We will begin with our women, with our Palestinian leader, with our Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, a Palestinian scholar and researcher and leader and a former PLC member and minister, who will talk about the meaning of UN Security Resolution Council regarding Palestinian women, with a special focus on issues of impunity and accountability for Israeli war crimes. Welcome all. Welcome, Dr. Hanan Ashrawi. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Riham. It's a pleasure to be with you. And thank you, Alianza, por la Solidaridad, as well as ActionAid for arranging for this webinar. I think it's very important that we speak out for ourselves and that we have an open forum for the discussion of 1325 in the context of Palestinian realities. I want to start by pointing out what a pleasure it is and an honor to be among such a remarkable group of participants and speakers. And in particular, because as you pointed out, they are coming from different areas in Palestine. So we don't forget that Palestine is not just West Bank, not just West Bank and Jerusalem, not just West Bank and Jerusalem and Gaza. There are Palestinians in Palestine 48, but there are also Palestinians in exile Palestinians who are facing refugee status, even though we do have a Palestinian from Shafat refugee camp, but still there are Palestinians in exile that must be heard and must be considered as the totality of the Palestinian women's reality as well as national reality. And of course, the Palestinian women, like the Palestinian nation, are experiencing multiple injustices and multi-tiered targeting and cruelties. Now, again, I'm also grateful that you are addressing 1325 in context, in the Palestinian context and a specific reality, because as a whole, there is an attempt at decontextualizing Palestine and Palestinian reality, because it's a means of extracting Palestine from its reality, whether under, as I said, occupation or in exile, dispossessed and so on, with an assumption or with an attempt at creating a false symmetry that everything is fine. Palestinian women, like women elsewhere, are only addressing internal issues, domestic issues, and dealing with only intrinsic problems, while ignoring really the elephant in the room, which is the occupation and the overall, of course, injustice that Palestinians are facing. So when we look at the four pillars of 1325 and the basis, whether it's in participation or protection or prevention or relief and recovery, all these must be addressed in the context that we are living in a state of constant aggression and captivity, and that the Palestinian reality, like other realities, there is no cut and paste reality. You do not have a formulaic resolution that applies to all, one size fits all. So when we talk about the national dimension, we know that the Palestinians as a nation are targeted and are victimized. And when we talk about the internal reality, it is in the context of what is happening. There is certainly a direct impact and interference by a settler colonial system that is becoming a permanent occupation that taints and distorts our reality, and that is the most intrusive system of control and violence that permeates every aspect of our lives. So we cannot dissociate. You're living within this context, and it permeates every single aspect of our lives, whether personal or collective, whether family or physical health, whether gender-based violence. They are all part of a system that is antithetical, not just to women's rights, antithetical to national and human rights in general. Again, the system of apartheid, which is deeply entrenched. It's a racist system that is based on discrimination. It is exclusionary and exclusive. And of course, it adopts the approach of ethnic cleansing. All these definitely are antithetical and are the opposite of women's rights and women's aspirations. And of course, we see a total devaluation of Palestinian lives and rights, while we see the rise of Jewish supremacy as a parallel to white supremacy in similar settler colonial situations. We struggle for inclusion, for tolerance, for equality, for human rights, and to be able to participate as equals in all aspects of our lives, particularly in decision-making. But you must know that the whole nation is deprived of all these rights. A nation that is living in captivity and struggling for its freedom. Also, at the same time, we have internal captivity, where we see women as captive of patriarchy, captive of traditional systems and norms that are used to justify the exclusion and oppression of women. We are living under different forms of violence that affects all our lives, violence and oppressions, whether it is military violence, whether it is emotional or physical or material violence, a state of constant attack and abuse. And gender-based violence is in that context under many and multiple negative forces. And it infiltrates our lives in every possible way. And of course, we are living in a situation that has total lack of all forms of security, whether it is personal security, economic security, territorial security, historical, cultural. Everything is threatened and challenged and subject to appropriation and confiscation. When you look at, for example, family security or community security, you see that all the structures of security, particularly for children and women and the vulnerable, are undermined because of the infiltration and pervasive presence of unbridled and unaccountable Israeli violence. And of course, as a nation, we are deprived of all our rights and of our sovereignty. And the right to self-determination is paramount among them. We are living in a situation where we have no control over our land, over our resources, even our homes and lives, and to the point where even our narrative is being erased and challenged. As you have heard today, this brilliant Smotrich has decided that the Palestinians do not exist, that we have been the creation of the last 100 years, but that there is no Palestinian people or Palestinian nation. So we are a figment of the imagination of our imagination or the imagination of the world. But anyway, there's an attempt at the erasure and the negation and the denial of our identity, of our history, of our culture, of our rights. And at the same time, when we do not have control, economic or any other type of control over our land, our access, freedom of movement, and so on, you can see how women are suffering in a multiplicity of ways, particularly when they seek economic independence or when they seek justice under a system that is surrounded or is within the framework of denial and oppression. Of course, we are deprived of the protection of the law, particularly international law and international humanitarian law. We do not see any global rule of law the way multilateral organizations and the so-called international community claims that there is a global rule of law and it applies equally to everybody. And we have seen how it doesn't apply equally to everybody. It is selective in many ways, and the international community adopts double standards. There are people that are more worthy or more deserving of equality than others. And so within the internal domestic Palestinian reality, we see also a tainted Palestinian legal system. As Jihad knows, our PLC, our Legislative Council, has been dissolved. We have several laws that have not been promulgated or adopted. And paramount among them is the family protection law, the penal code, and others. So absent international justice, we are struggling to create a system of justice seeking societal and legal fairness and justice within Palestine. And of course, given the fact that there is full Israeli impunity with international complicity, as I said, this means that the aggressor has been emboldened. Israel has maintained and compounded, this system has maintained and compounded the vulnerability of the victims, the marginalized, the excluded, and the disenfranchised, while the aggressor has adopted a system of total power control, leading to power politics versus participatory politics. When we talk about participatory politics internally, we are seeing the framework and the total control of power politics, particularly when we see women and youth and older people and all vulnerable segments of society, and the handicapped, of course, who are not protected by the law. Just to try to get to the something that might be shocking, the more powerless any leadership feels, especially our leadership under Israeli control, the more it resorts to using power, and particularly repression against its own people. The more insecure the leadership feels, the more it targets internal security and cohesion. The more helpless it feels before the Israeli occupation and injustice, the more authoritarian it becomes to maintain some semblance of control. Of course, when we talk about women, peace, and security, I talked about the absence of security, but there is no peace here because the occupation and, of course, all its manifestations as a system of control is a perpetual system of aggression. And unfortunately, the peace process has gained a life of its own and has lost any relationship to reality and therefore lost any type of integrity or credibility. And it has become a cover for continued displacement and replacement, which is the paradigm that we are seeing. We are seeing Israel pursuing a policy of annexation, of criminality, and state terrorism. I don't need to talk about Hawara, I don't need to talk about Nablus, I don't need to talk about Jenin or Khalil or Sheikh Jarrah or the refugee camps everywhere. But this system is ongoing while the whole world says you should get back to talking and that all you need is negotiations and everything is fine. But there is no accountability, no enforcement, no ways in which you can deal with Israeli impunity. Now, the Palestinian people as a whole, of course, are deprived of the protection of the multilateral system, unlike other places where you see how, for example, in Ukraine, it took 6 days for the ICC to start a criminal investigation when we've been asking for it for 7 years. Look at the ICC decision. They issued a warrant for the arrest of Putin, and for 75 years, Israel has been busy exercising war crimes and crimes against humanity in broad daylight. And of course, it is not only not punished, but it is also rewarded. There is no oversight, there is no enforcement, there are no enforcement mechanisms as well, and therefore no real accountability if there are no consequences. Now, despite all the shortcomings of 1325 and the quite often we say the inability of the multilateral system to free itself from the control of powerful countries or to get any kind of enforcement mechanisms, the Palestinian nation as a whole, Palestinian women, I would start, are still seeking the implementation of 1325 and all the other agreements, not because we think they're perfect, but because they give us an initial handle on reality in order to start holding Israel accountable and to start, of course, dealing with our own domestic reality. But to conclude, I think Palestinian women, like the rest of the Palestinian people everywhere, like Palestinian nation as a whole, we remain resilient, we remain determined, and we remain persistent, and I'm confident that we will prevail. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hanan Ashrawi. Thank you very much for this insight and for this full insight about our women and the peace and security agenda here in Palestine, and for your great interventions. And now we are honored to be joined by Mrs. Jihad Abu Znaid from Shafat refugee camp, who is activist and a former Palestinian Legislative Council member, who will highlight about the suffering of women in Jerusalem caused by illegal Israeli policies as home demolitions, as the recent escalation in Jerusalem, military raids and invasions to neighborhoods of Shafat and the closing of Shafat neighborhoods in Jerusalem. The floor is yours, Jihad, and you have 10 minutes so to say your input regarding the women's situation in Jerusalem. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this webinar, and thanks for all the colleagues and the distinguished colleagues who are with us. Actually, I will talk about it's a very important topic today, International Women's Day, about the suffering that the Palestinian women, especially Jerusalemite women in Jerusalem. And I will specialize in Jerusalem. When you're a mother and woman, and you are the prisoner of your son when you live in Jerusalem, every moment, every second means that you're paying a big tax of oppression, and for the oppression, demolitions, arrests, demolishing the feeling of motherhood when your son is imprisoned and you are the prisoner in Iran. I, as a Jerusalemite, I live in a refugee camp in Jerusalem. So imagine the suffering that I suffer. I suffer from occupation and all aspects of life. I suffer when I take my children to school, when I bring my children from school, when I go to get treatment at hospitals, when I breathe, when I can't go to, I'm banned to pray in the holy sites. I'm just because I'm a Palestinian, and this apartheid system regime that occupation practices, they don't have anything against. They're practicing all types of oppressions against Jerusalemite women and Palestinian women in particular. So women is really targeted, and she's targeted by this occupation. We are living difficult days. Nobody's. What peace are we talking about? What security are we talking about? We just want to live like others around the world. So the oppression that Jerusalemite women suffer from hits her hard. How can such a woman feel peace or security? What are we talking about? What peace? There's demolitions, killing, infrastructure, demolition of infrastructure, and a prisoner to her own child. The settler does everything instead of her. So yes, Jerusalemite women suffer a lot, and they are very much targeted. It's the number of women, about martyrs. Palestinian Jerusalemite women are being more attacked because they are accused that they are raising children as terrorists. So it's about protection of our site. We are Jerusalemite women. We never lived such a political situation before, this discriminatory oppressive system as we're living these days. So this target is a systematic target of our existence, to eradicate our existence, our demography. And a Palestinian woman has the right to breed, to have her own children. If we follow the Israeli media and we see their propaganda, they talk about that such women are the main. So yes, there is. And she is, her feelings are destroyed. So now it's the role of Palestinian women we're talking about, that we want her to get back and to come back. This is the hope of women. That's why it's a battle of existence.
جريمة كبيرة، جريمة إنسانية لم نتحدث عنها نحن بحاجة فعلا كنساء وكحركة نسوية.
We are in need to regain. What is it that we need from Jerusalemite women? So these are questions that we need to ask. What do we need from such women? What is the future we're looking for? These are questions that we ask ourselves every day. Where do we stand? They have destroyed us. They've destroyed our existence. Women, this woman is strong. She suffers a lot on daily basis. So it's a big battle, And I do hope that ActionAid will conduct a special session, and we hope that Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, who loves Palestine and Jerusalem, to have a special session designated to Palestinian women, to Palestinian mothers, to listen to them about their suffering, the farmer, the teacher, the interpreter, the employee, or the farmer who sells her legumes and vegetables, and where the settler confiscates everything about her. We're talking about the mother of we're talking about real this is and who is the prisoner of her own son. So this is where we want to talk about how can we really raise her hand and take her to security as much as we can. Thank you very much, Jihad, and I do hope that we in Alliance and we ActionAid will continue to provide protection to. I'm sorry that I've specialized my talking about Jerusalem. It's not about like undermining the situation in the West Bank. We're all one nation. Yes, no worries. We have given a good space to Jerusalem, and now, and as Dr. Hanan Ashrawi said, the green light and in Palestinians everywhere, they do play a role, and they have a place with Alianza and ActionAid and
a young women activist from
and
Green Line, Aya Zinati, who is advocate for the rights of women and the marginalized people through the tour that she is organized to their places, and give them the floor to talk about their suffering caused by the occupation and the patriarchal and the social issues. Welcome, Aya, and thanks for accepting our invitation. Go ahead, Aya. You will talk us about the woman status in the Green Line under the discriminatory Israeli laws. Go ahead, Aya, and welcome again.
مرحبا، شكرا ريهام. تحياتي للجميع.
Thank you, Riham, and thank you all. I'm very happy to be part of this meeting, and I thank Riham Jafari and Sama Hassab for inviting me and giving me the floor to be with you in this session. As Riham said, I am Aya Zinati. I'm from Lud. I'm a political activist. I live in Haifa, and here it's about it's something that is about we're movement before the Nakba, and the occupation had banned us from practicing our these traditions, and I decided in 2017 to revive this norm and to it back in order to create this space, feminist space to all. Podcast through Arab 1948 is it's something, a project about Palestinian women living in the 1948 land who do not have any documents that can organize her status, and it's either that she doesn't have the right papers, and usually they have temporary papers. Most women that I work for are women from West Bank and Gaza. I am in Sakhrot, and it is a non-Zionist state, and it talks about the rights of Palestinian refugees. And before my start, I would like to and to ask for their families, for their mothers, against all discrimination. I salute our Palestinian people, our in the diaspora and in Gaza and in the camps, and glory be upon our martyrs. I will present to you a part of the practices and policies of the Israeli in the practices in the 1948 land. I would like to refer that such policies and do not are not always based on law, and they are without no lawful and
and without even any relationship. We know that we are not being, we are not getting any justice under this Israeli law, and we don't want to change our identity. It's we face the same oppression that we live in the 1948 lands, in a situation where we are absented on daily basis, as Samatrich said, that there's nothing called Palestinian people. This is something that we've been listening to since the 1948, and in universities everywhere we have to communicate with. So we are resilient against all such claims and allegations. I would like to salute Palestinian women wherever they are. We all live and undergo multiple oppression. Our battle against to get our freedom is part of our whole struggle. I will start about the political persecutions. As you know, our people in the 1948 lands suffer a lot, and including, and here we are more into the political activity. We're talking about arrests, demolitions, about organizing demonstrations here in the 1948 land, where activists are seriously persecuted. They are arrested to be interrogated because they have either actively participated or organized some demonstrations. And in such persecutions, we approach women. What women face, that they are personal. They go dig into their personal details about the acceptance of our society of this, or their communities, of their activities. They try to extort them. In 2013, they've persecuted female activists through their fathers. So, and they asked the fathers to shut up their daughters, or would arrest the fathers themselves, which this is just to oblige women to be dependent. And this is a clear attempt how they are strengthening the patriarchal system through a colonizing system. It is a patriarchal and occupation and colonizing at the same time. And I would like here to discuss the expectation to have complaints from women when we talk about the violations of women or violence against women domestically. Then how can we as women feel that we can trust organizations that we think they can provide us with protection, whereas we're sure that they would be against us because they have to abide by what the Israelis need. So how can we trust such organizations, regardless of what we face, whether sexual harassment or not? Persecution is also related to the cyber world, digital world, and if they were took part in any virtual sessions. For instance, I will give you a certain personal experience. I once I took part in one of the virtual sessions. Since then, I've been persecuted, and also they persecute activist women in universities, and all the time we've been seeing this big attack against the different Zionist organizations against Palestinian women, and this happens in the Israeli networks.
And they're not exceptional. This happens every day, and it could be different campaigns, one after the other. An article would be written against us personally, personal, with personal pictures, and would go on since then July till now. So this is a sort of intimidation, and we're talking about persecutions that have other sources like work or if you're working within a society association, especially if it was an Israeli one. And we as Palestinians, most of our workplaces are Israeli places. So we are persecuted through our workplace. Such person works in and she's calling for the right for return and the right of refugees, the BDS. So this is how it happens. This persecution happens. It's like a snowball. It starts from the organization we work with and forward. And we're talking about the persecution and dismissing of student employees in case they posted the political statuses after certain incidents. And I would like to give, for instance, an example. This is what happened in May 2022. Just went on strike like elsewhere, but in places some employees were held accountable and they were dismissed from their position, or at least they were threatened. If they go on strike, they will be dismissed. So we're talking about policies or not employing even any teachers who get engaged in any political practices or demonstrations. And I hope I'm committed to time. We think about 1 minute to wrap up. Regarding land and housing is something very important, and this is a policy we've been threatened with since the Nakba. There are places that we cannot even live in, and it's these abandoned villages that we're not allowed to go back to, and it's not because of the density in the population density in our Arab towns. So at times they would claim that is there really and this is of course something imaginary solution that we disagree. We reject that our struggle would be this fragmented, especially when it comes to the right of return. The return of our abandoned villages, which they go back to all our people. This is the right of our people. Some Palestinian housing units are threatened to be demolished, and that they do not have the permission or the permits. So we're talking about not having any planning for our villages, and of course we will increase in our population. So that's why we are labeled as not licensed, do not have permits, and we have to pay big fines and continuous threats to demolish our houses, as happens in Led, Naqab, Ara, Group, Akka, and elsewhere. We're talking about neighborhoods and villages with no infrastructure whatsoever, without having any water or sanitation networks. And lately, I don't know if you've seen in Akka, some houses were demolished for Abu Aish family, and we've seen women standing in the face of soldiers trying to confront those soldiers in order to stop this demolition process, but regretfully no one listened to them. And then we're talking about also if there is a legal track at court about stopping such and families would think that there's a legal track, and then all of a sudden the Israeli occupations will demolish the house without even giving any note that there is a court to be adjourned. So we see this is how they do what they do. We're talking about 50,000 housing units in the 1948 lands are threatened to be demolished. As for Palestinian women and that they are not really recognized. We're talking about not having rights to work, to a woman who is not sick, that cannot go to any clinic or to have birth because she cannot, because they are not registered in the system. So, and also then the polygamy is added to system. If a man who marries more than one woman, the second and the third wife will not be registered as married, and their children will not be registered in official parents. As the Al-Karama uprising, it is when we say that mothers pay a big price regarding what happened there. So if if some youth were detained and then they were went into a house arrest, the family has to move from where it's living. Let's say it's from Tamra, and there was a family, Abu Rumi and Mr. Jihan Abu Rumi, and through our tour, she told us that they had to move to another village, and she had to stop her work and the whole life just to try to be with her son. And so this is she's not only a prisoner. Women prisoners are not only in Jerusalem, they're elsewhere. And the biggest case that our people are witnessing, and Palestinian women in particular, in the 1948 land, is the crime and arms in our communities. We're talking about this is a continuous Nakba, and women are part of this catastrophe. Some women are killed just merely because they are women, and but there are other women who are being victim for and not necessarily to be a direct victim, just she could be subject to killing. We're talking about 400,000 weapons that are unlicensed, and of course the source of these weapons are smuggled by the or sold by the Israeli soldiers. So we see what we are witnessing is that crime is very much spread in the Palestinian community in the 1948 land, and the women are paying the biggest price for that. This is this is how I try to present to you a small part of that ongoing Nakba that we are still living in, and we hope that we as Palestinian women can do something about this. If anybody would think that we will stop to talk about Palestine, they're mistaken. We will continue to talk about Palestine, about our rights as Palestinians and our rights as women. So this is what I just want to say. Sorry, I missed that. And as one of the women who have founded movements and in 2015, and to conclude that there is no free nation without free women. Thank you very much for this chance. Thank you. Aya, very nice, very expressive intervention, comprehensive about the role of Palestinian women in the 1948 lands. Thank you very much for this detailed presentation about you were very expressive about our situation as Palestinian women, and thank you. And we do encourage you to continue this work, to continue your inside Palestine and the 1948 lands. Thank you very much, Aya.
And now we are more than honored to have Mr. Tony Abu Akla and representing the family of our Palestinian brave and famous and distinguished Shireen Abu Akla, correspondent of Al Jazeera, who was killed by Israeli occupation while performing her duties in Jenin refugee camps. We will keep talking about Shireen. We will keep talking how this family, this great family, exert huge efforts to seek justice on national and international levels, and to ask for accountability for the war crimes committed by Israeli occupation against this Palestinian journalist who try all the time to convey the message of her oppressed people, or to convey the message of the Palestinians who face the occupation on daily basis. Welcome, Mr. Tony Abu Akla, to speak about how you seek justice, how the international community fulfill its duties towards this war crime. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Riham, and thank Alianza and ActionAid. I would like to wish Palestinian women and women around the world, and tomorrow, Mother's Day, I wish you all the best. We, as a family, we were shocked after the assassination of Shireen in coordination that this occupying forces did in order to distort the reality and to change it in a systematic way and through all by its all mechanisms. And regretfully, in the first moments of the that we were shocked by the different videos that we've seen broadcasted by the occupying forces, by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. All this proves that Shireen was assassinated by that, where they tried to prove that Shireen was assassinated by Palestinians. This is of course very wrong, and without any, they showed no respect to our feelings as family or as Palestinian people. We've seen how the Israeli media tried to whiten the picture of the Israeli forces and how the police have attacked her coffin. All this is a systematic policy just to distort the reality and to brighten their image in front of the world, and to distort the truth that they have targeted her as a Palestinian media person, woman who was carrying out her duties in Geneva. Regretfully, all this was due to the international community's silence, and that Israel is enjoying her impunity, its impunity. Why? Because we are Palestinians who are persecuted and we are under oppression. It's only because the criminal is Israel, and the criminal is an Israeli one. And as they said, he has like a carte blanche because he has impunity, and around the world is known that he kills just to make sure against our people, and on more than over 70 years, and we've been under occupation, and the international committee was still silent. Since the first day, if the international committee has done any movement to support us, things wouldn't have gone down the drain. But it's Israel is moving forward towards killing people, journalists, women, children, without any sort of accountability. And this will be ongoing unless the international community made a change and made a move. And it's now the time to implement some accountability. We as a family have approached many judicial entities, and everybody, we were surprised to hear that everybody defended Israel, that it has impunity, and Israel is trying to maintain its security and the security of its people. So this is the how they hang things, that it's always the same justification. It's the Israeli people's security. I don't know, it's brainwashing. Is it force, the big force that Israel has against Palestinian people? This is what helps them to keep going in this policy, or we Palestinian people have to do more? I think Palestinian people have done and given more sacrifices than any other people, and regretfully all are going through without any being accountable. I've watched a film about the assassination of journalists, and I've seen Palestinian names for prominent names and women and who were assassinated by Israel, and we haven't even heard of. Even their names are not being mentioned. Maybe this is something that Palestinians should have worked on, and the Palestinian media and entities should really work more on promoting those names of Palestinian journalists who were killed. As for something that is The occupying forces is thinking of if there was what happened a while ago. Rachel Corey, who was killed, an American journalist who was killed in Gaza. Not one Israeli official was held accountable, and they, on the contrary, they claimed that it was her fault that he confronted them. Also, other international, Italian, or European journalists were assassinated by Israelis, but we haven't seen any move from the international community that asked for justice. And my last visit to the US, I was surprised to be asked, what do you expect of this, the outcome of this accountability? What do I expect? It's an assassination. It's and anyone who had committed such a crime need to be brought to court, to have a transparent process, to have an investigation, interrogation, and to be held accountable. We've seen many reports from different media platforms, from the UN, from human rights organizations. All have concluded that it was an intentional killing for Sinin. A sniper had killed her intentionally, but and because they wanted to distort her reports that she used to expose through these reports the practices of the Israeli forces and occupation. But the silence of the international community, the US, and regretfully the Arab countries who are not making the right or not exerting enough efforts to mobilize the international community will not take us anywhere. We know it's not much to do. It's just a committee should be formed from different Arab countries to mobilize the whole thing, to make a change, a shift in the international community's idea about the occupation. Our main problem is occupation. Period. All these the other practices are come under occupation. We felt we left occupation and started to talk about settlements or infrastructure and so on. But occupation is the main problem, and Israel the occupation should be taken to the ICC and to be held accountable, and nothing else. Shireen was assassinated. She will never come back, and we will remain to call for this accountability and in order to regain her right, but there should be accountability. Thank you very much.
شكرا أستاذ طوني، شكرا على هالمداخلة وشكرا على
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the efforts that you're doing. Thank you for being with us, and we salute you. And we are proud with all the efforts that you're exerting on all levels, just to get justice to Shireen's right to be to get her assassinators accountable. Of course, we will continue to raise the voices for Palestinian people to get their rights and to seek to get this accountability. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And now we would like to welcome Miss Farha from Jenin. Farha is a feminist activist that she heads Women's Society Association in the camp. In order not to forget, she works in media and with women, and she documents all violations against Palestinian women in Jenin and in its camp. Farha is, we are eager to listen to you about the military escalation that took place recently for more than 1 year in Jenin, and where is Jenin is being targeted in its in the escalations, military escalation that's affecting it. How does this affect it and affect people? Thank you very much, and welcome to all, and thank you for inviting me. And I listen to stories, to all the stories about the suffering of women in all levels. Jenin camp actually is where women are known to be strong, to be strong-willed, and the women in Jenin won't be displaced as happened to them in 1967 and 1948. What happens in the camp on a media level, and here I would like to send my prayers to the martyr Shireen, who always stood with Palestinian women. She was an integral part of the Palestinian media. She was always supportive to all the needs in Jenin camp and on a nation level. And now we're absented in a media aspect on the narrative level, and it's the Israeli narrative that is being exposed. So it's important for us that to export our real narrative. Jenin camp is attacked on daily invasions, incursions, arrests, killing 2 women, 2 children. This happens on daily basis. There are procedures and Israeli practices that are very oppressive. Accordingly, what is said in the media is something very minimal to what women really endure in this place. So we see women who are playing a big role in this camp, and after they've lost their husbands, their sons, or members of their families, which takes us back to 2002 when the invasion took place and the demolition of the infrastructure of Jenin and the big battle in Jenin, and women played a vital role then, and they were like the ambiguous soldiers who were supporters, and now they are repeating the same deeds and they're working in order to maintain their existence in Jenin camp. However, I would like to say that this is a very difficult situation, a very dire situation, very painful, because now a woman cannot guarantee that her son would go back, her daughter might go back. She is awake 24 hours just to monitor and make sure that her family is safe. And this is in some of the scenes that you see on TV, it's very painful when we have sudden incursions, how the mother would feel lost waiting for her children. And now we sleep, and while listening to the sirens, we don't listen to music, we don't watch anything beautiful, we just wait for who's next, and because the mothers could become martyrs, their children could become martyrs, and we all women always anticipate like who is next to be martyred. We want to live, we don't want to lose hope, but they have made us lose some of our dreams, our hopes, our will, and but we still reiterate that women in Jenin camp are strong, resilient, and all this scene affects and impacts their mental state, their vision, the stability. A mother is in Jenin camp is fatigued. She feels that she is lost and she's all alone by herself in this battle. And in other areas, they listen news about Jenin, but just very few who came to the Jenin camp and listened to mothers who lost 2 of her children, how sad she is, how they want to revenge to their children because she feels that she has lost the most precious to her heart. And you as mothers, you can feel this because you are part of the suffering of this very difficult equation that women undergo, and this of course impacts their mental and social status. We're talking about the mother of martyr cannot even talk, cannot even imagine that her son who was there moments ago is now gone forever. A mother who had lost not only a member but 2 or 3 members. Some families have lost many members in their families. So in every house, in this camp, in every neighborhood, there's a story about the suffering of women, about the circumstances of women, about how vicious this occupation is, and how it just extorts Palestinian people and oppresses them. But I would like to confirm that despite these difficult circumstances, that on daily basis we try to support women and to have hope, and that things would come better. Our children now is out of school. We don't receive services with the strike of teachers. Our children are without education. Education is a very important part to every Palestinian, and now our children don't go to school. So this is part of our struggle. We want them to be educated, to be able to convey the message that when we talk about, we try them not to forget when it started from the depth and the suffering and the wound that was in 2002, in order to confirm that women, children, or elderly are still resilient because they have a bigger dream. It's the return, the dream of right of return, and this will never happen if women are being progressive in their in decision making, in struggle. There are women who are members in popular communities who lead the camp. So there is a real change, but this change is very painful because every day we take a move forward. This is where we feel that women in Jenin, as Jihad said in Jerusalem, is similar to women in Ara, and so on, and so it's the same place, but the occupier is the same, that it tries to kill the will of Palestinian people. And I would like to tell you, this really affects the stability of children, and children are now have matured even earlier than they should be living in a normal life, but these difficult circumstances are affecting women and children realistically. And now we see that many women are in need for psychological support, and we in Kayla Nansa play this role, but this is not sufficient. We work with a mother and a child on a certain thing that might have a certain incident, but this will be recurred the next day, and the same thing will happen, and the same suffering will happen. So we are living difficult circumstances. We wait every 24 hours. We are in the wait. What happens next? What type of invasion will take place? What type of incursion? Even during daylight, they do invade us. What we say, that women are incubators, are followers, they're living it, and they're part of this. And I think that circumstances are so difficult, and without having one unified vision, one hand, things will become more difficult and will escalate more and more. And I say here that every Palestinian woman, wherever she is, suffers from occupation. And I always say that the reality is the real witness of what is happening in the Jenin camp. On daily basis, there is women who are the wives and mothers of and when they visit and they see how much suffering they face from being away and until they make it to the prisons. So the propagation that happens against women, the physical search, all these things are in the world, but the world is only listening but not presenting anything, and not starting to support women who should be supported.
شكرا لك وشكرا على مداخلتك وعلى هذا التفصيل.
Thank you very much and for this detailed and of course women, they are of course victims, but this always our Palestinian women endure the biggest burden. Thank you very much. And now we also are we're honored to have with us Miss Amal Siam from the Gaza Strip. Amal is an activist and a feminist researcher that heads the women's affairs in the West in Gaza, and she coordinates the coalition of UN Resolution 1325 in the Gaza Strip. Amal will tell us and present to us about the impact of the siege, the unfair siege and just against the Gaza Strip. How does it impact women's lives, their struggle under in light of this international silence? Good evening to all, and thank you very much ActionAid and ABS for organizing this very important webinar that is in the occasion of the 8th of March. And here we would like to salute women around the world and Palestinian women wherever they are, and in the diaspora, and in and to any woman who rejects oppression. And for sure, all women who have really showed the image of solidarity, and prayers be upon our martyrs, and a special tribute to our martyr Shireen Abu Akleh, and our salute to her family. And I will talk about the Palestinian women's status based on 1325, which had where Dr. Hanan tackled it when she said that UN security resolution that was passed in 2000, and it was followed by 9 decisions. This decision is a very important decision for Palestinian women who live under occupation, has been living under occupation for more than 75 years. This decision is the first document, official legal document that was issued by the Security Council, which, and it said parties of conflict need to respect women's rights and support her participation in peace negotiations and reconstruction. This decision is important very much for Palestinian women, but let's also take into consideration that this decision, when it was issued, it stated that women under conflicts and struggles, and it did not mention that Palestine is still under occupation and we are not under conflict as happened in other places around the world. This decision had stated that women and conflicts, we say that we Palestinian women in all around historic Palestine are under long-term occupation. Therefore, it was amended and it was followed by decisions, 9 decisions, and recommendation number 30 in CEDAW. This decision intersects with the women's feminist movement, and it parallels between the national and social aspects, and it acknowledges the conflict's impact on women and girls, and it states clearly that women and girls and children are paying the higher price when any struggle and conflict takes place, and when any conflicts happen anywhere. And it also intersects with the civic conflicts. So when we describe the Palestinian status, we see that this is one of the main resolutions that serve Palestinian women. But then where do the challenges lie in implementing this resolution? Challenges lie in the implementation of this resolution in continuation to what was presented by my colleagues in the 1948 lands in Jerusalem, in Ramallah, and in Jenin, and all villages and Palestinian camps. Also, Israel is the main constraint in achieving peace and security to Palestinian women. It impacts all this occupation, affects all aspects of Palestinian women's life, and we are the biggest payers for this price, occupation, and the different policies, the different aggressions on the Gaza Strip had gravely violated all international conventions, international humanitarian law, and international human rights law, 4 wars on Gaza, and an invasion in 2022 to demolish people and infrastructure. Of course, 1325 talks about the protection of civilians under conflicts, and while we are targeted in these invasions against Gaza, hundreds of women were killed, were martyred during the different aggressions on Gaza, thousands, and the area does not even, we cannot really mention here the numbers of women who were martyred. More than 600 women in the 4 recurrent invasions on the Gaza Strip. Thousands of men were wounded, and many women have lost husbands, houses, loved ones, children. And up till now, we are still living with hundreds of women who are still displaced, coercively displaced due to the Israeli practices. The occupation have also did crimes, war crimes. They are really war crimes when it had invaded Gaza. And through the return marches that happen in Gaza. The occupation have demolished the infrastructure and factories, and it had wiped out families from the national registry, and increased the number of widowed women. The siege against Gaza that's been there since 2000, since the same year that this resolution was issued. Everybody claims that the siege was imposed on Gaza since 2006. No, actually, it was imposed on Gaza since 2000. But it was more strict after Hamas won the elections in 2006. And the practice of the occupation for the collective punishment practice and closing the crossings and imposing the siege. This is it's an illegal siege, inhumanitarian. It forms a grave violation to all international conventions, without having the world making any move, without the UN pressuring or making a move, or its member states to end this siege. And up till this moment, occupation, in what it had caused in aggressions, attacks, and siege, is held accountable to all what we are enduring. It had made Gaza live a very grave humanitarian crisis that was classified in the UNRWA report as an unfit area for living in 2020. And now we're in 2023, and the situation is still the same. UNRWA stated that 80% of the people in Gaza and Gaza families depend on humanitarian aids. The poverty line is more than 53%, which means it's 4 times more than it is in the West Bank. More than a third of the people in the West Bank, in the Gaza, live under poverty, and many of them are headed by women, many of these families, and the poorest of the poor, and the most unemployment rates are among women. They're about 75%, and especially for educated women who have finished 13 years of studies.
القوى العاملة لا تتعدى 20%. ارتفاع في معدلات الإصابة بالأمراض
and being hit with sick are more than 14,000 cancer patients in Gaza. 13 of them, 3% is and are women. It's 1 women every day. So these are facing not being mobilized, they cannot travel, and regretfully, even Hanun and Rafahan Beit Hanun, and so let alone the situation. So regretfully, we hear about cases that they accept that the accompanier can travel, but the patient is banned from traveling. Of course, there is lack of medication for cancer patients, and so the occupation is the one that caused poverty. It caused increase of violence against women and gender-based violence because of this this increase in these factors of violence. Resolution 1325 talks about activating the women's participation in decision making, and Palestinian women, and not only women in the Gaza Strip. Women are excluded from being there in the reconciliation committees or reconciliation and reconstruction committees, compensation committees, and occupation is also responsible for the fragmentation of the Palestinian women's movement, not being able to communicate with each other from the 1948 lands in Jerusalem, Ramallah, Jerusalem, and Gaza. We suffer as women and as women's organizations, and from communicating with each other because of the closure of crossings and because of the lack of having facilitations and permits by the occupying forces, which hinders natural communication between us as women. And occupation is responsible for this freezing that took place in the democratic area, Palestinian period. What happened from having this affects Palestinian people. It affects the way what's happening in the West Bank in Gaza. Today we revive and we commemorate the 8th of March. We point our fingers to the occupation in banning the implementation of 1325, despite the many things and the many efforts that are done, and due to having national but still there is specificity in all Palestinians, and now it's what says it's there is no way what's happening in Gaza, what's happening is happening everywhere. So all Palestinians are under occupation, and occupation is the main constraint in the implementing 1325. Accordingly, it's about that there's no impunity on these criminals, and Israel is just as if it's over the law, and the whole world is being they're using the two-standard policies. This is the specificity of Palestinian women when it and this is what Palestinian women face around the world. It is a long-term occupation that is supported by the U.S. policies, international communities, and in order not to take longer, and for sure we should expose all and uncover all Israeli practices, and to hold Israel accountable for all its crimes
حقوق الشعب
in
الفلسطيني
order not
وحقوق
to use
النساء
the two
يجب أن
standard
يكون هناك
policies
تعزيز
against Palestinians and to
لمشاركة
strengthen
النساء في
the
كل
engagement of
المجالات بما فيها
women
صناعة
in all
السلام
aspects,
وحوارات
including
المصالحة
them,
ويجب أن يكون
and
هناك إرادة سياسية
and to have a
لحماية
political will
نضال المرأة
to protect
الفلسطينية
the
ومنع الهجمات عن
Palestinian women,
الناشطات وعن المؤسسات النسوية
women's activists,
حتى نبقى
in
جميعا
order to
نساء
remain
صامدات في
all
مواجهة الاحتلال
keep
وشكرا.
resilient in facing and encountering the
شكرا على هاي
occupation.
المداخلة
Thank you.
وعلى
Thank you
هذا
very much.
التحليل العميق
Thank you for this deep
الأثر
analysis
الجندري للاحتلال وسياسات
about
الاحتلال على النساء الفلسطينيات في
and
سياق
about the
قرار
process of
مجلس
women
الأمن
and
1325
1325 in
شكرا
Gaza.
على
Thank you
المناصرة
very
والعمل
much
الجهد اللي بتعمليه
for
لتنظيم
all the work that
وتحرير
you've been doing in
الحياة
order to
ومسار النساء الفلسطينيات في
discuss
قطاع غزة
and Palestinian
وشكرا على
women.
حضوركم
And
السامق
thank you for
معنا في هذا
accepting
الويبينار
being with us in and our invitation and
الآن
being
رح
with us in
يكون
this webinar.
عندنا
And now
هي
we
انضمت
will
لنا من المكتب
have
السيدة حورية دوفش
Miss
من تل
Houria
الميدا من الخليل
from Tel Meda in
من منطقة
Hebron,
تتعرض لعنف المستوطنين
from an
باستمرار
area
ومسيطر
who is
عليها
subject to the
الجيش
settlers'
الإحتلالي على حياتها لازم تاخذ
violence
تصريح
every
وهي
day.
داخلة
She
وهي
needs
طالعة
to
على
get
بحيرة
a
لازم
permit
كمان
every
تحضر
day
نقلها من
to
المدرسة
go
كل
in
يوم
and out of her
حورية رح
neighborhood
تحكي
and to
معنا
accompany her children.
على كيف
Hurriya
حياة النساء في هذا الحي
will tell us
المحاط
how do
بالمستوطنين
women live
المحاط
in
بالمستوطنات
this area
القادرات
that is surrounded
بتقديم
by
خدمات الانترنت
by
وخدمات الكهرباء
settlements,
والماء
how
في هذا
they
الحي. حورية معنا
uh,
اليوم في المكتب رح تنضم
Hurriya
لنا من مكتب
is
اكشن ايد
with
في اسرائيل.
us
حورية
and
رح تحكي مداخلتها. تفضلي يا حورية. يعطيكم العافية ومساء الخير
thank
للكل
you very
جميعا.
much and thank you all.
بكون مسرورة كثير بهالقامات
I would be very
وجودها معنا
happy
ومسرورة
to
كثير
have you
بوجودها.
all with us.
أنا سيدة أسكن تل الميدا.
I'm a woman. I live
حاليا
in
في
Tel
الهجن
Meda.
وفي غرب مدينة
It's
الخليل.
in the western
المنطقة
part of
الوحيدة
Hebron. It's the only
فيها
area
مستوطنين من
in
أشرس
which
أنواع
its settlers
المستوطنين
are very vicious,
المحتلين
violent,
في المنطقة بالشراسة
very
بالتعامل
oppressive, the way they
بالاعتداءات
treat
المتبادلة
us,
على السيدات
the
والأطفال والرجال
continuous
كذلك
attacks
عندهم
on women,
المرأة
on
في
the
منطقة تل
children,
الميدا
on
ما
even
بقدر أوصفها
men. And
بكلمتين
so
أو
the role of
ثلاثة.
women cannot
لو
be
بدك
just
عن
said in
معاناتها
2
الجسدية وبدك عن
minutes about
معاناتها
the
النفسية
physical
وبدك عن معاناتها
psychological
الاقتصادية
suffer,
ما بكفيني
economic
الدكتوراه بس
suffering.
إني أحصر كل
It
هالمعاناة اللي إحنا بنعانيها.
needs a lot
لو
to
بدي
talk
أحكي إن أنا
about
لو بدي
this.
أدخل على بيتي لازم يكون إيدي
So when
رقمي.
I
لازم أكون
want to
على
go
رأس
home, I need
الجبل.
to have a
إذا
number. I
الحرس
need to
فيش
have
كهرباء
an
لازم
eye
أضل من
print.
خارج
And if
البيت
I don't
خارج
have
المنطقة وأطلب
electricity,
كهرباء
you need
وأتأكد
to
من
wait
شخصيتي
and
ومن
make
إني أنا
sure
ساكنة
that
جوا
if there's electricity
تغيير المناخ
is cut
باستمرار
off,
حتى ما يصير
I will
بيننا
stay
وبين
out
المنطقة
until
أو تعارف
electricity
المعيشة
comes in
وحل
order for
مستقبلي
them
جوا.
to make
غير
sure that
أولادي
I
لما
live
يجي
here.
ابني بده يروح
So
على المدرسة
and also when my
ابني
children
بده
go
على
to
الجامعة
school
بدك
or
أضل في
to
هذا الخوف من
university,
الرعب من التوتر
we
من الضرب
always
من
are
أي مصيبة في
worried
الشارع
and
ممكن المستوطنة
apprehensive.
يعتدوا عليها ممكن
Might
يعملوا
they
عليها
be
فوضى
subject
ممكن
to
تصير أكبر
violence,
من
or
هيك
she
ولا هيك.
might
طيب
throw
لما رجعت على البيت أول الحاجة
garbage
كيف
on
إجت
them,
زيارة
or if
عسكر
the
إسرائيلي
uh,
وجاي للمنطقة
crossing
يزورنا.
was or the checkpoint
طيب
was
من وين
closed.
ممكن
What
تمشي
happens
خلال الفترة
if an
هاي
official
وهي
comes
خارج
to visit,
المنطقة؟
Israeli official comes to
بعدين
visit?
أنا
What
لما
happens to my
أكون
daughter who is
قاعدة في
outside that
أثناء في
area?
بيتي
And
ببقى
during
بشوف
while
الأنباء
having at
بشوف
home,
الإعلام
I don't
بكون
feel
قاعدة في
secured.
بيتي
Even in
بفكر
my own
في
house, I would
ابني
be
بفكر
thinking of
ببنتي
my
بفكر
husband coming
بأخواتي إذا
safe
بينزلوا
home,
لي بفكر
my
بتصرفاتي
children,
بفكر لما يجي
my
يزوروني فوق.
grandchildren,
يعني إحنا حاول الاحتلال قدر
even
الإمكان
friends
إنه
cannot
يحصرنا في
really
منطقة من
visit me.
المنطقة
So
لأنهم
they
عملوا
try
خطة
to
جديدة إنه بده يدخل
displace us
المنطقة
and
في قرار
to
رقم.
force us to
أنا
get
رح يكون
away.
رقم
And we get,
50
I
رقم
have
50
my number
رقم
is
بنتي ممكن يكون
50.
60
My
هالأرقام. يعني أنا
my
كيف
daughter's
أختار
number is
رقم
60.
مش
So we
أنا
are numbers
كسيدة
now.
اسمها
We
حورية
cannot.
أنا
I
اخترتها
don't come
وإحنا
in as a
حضرنا
name. I
هاي
have a name,
الخطة
Hariya, through my number.
بمناقشية
And
ومجموعة من
we
السيدات في
fought
المنطقة
against this
زاروا
with the
المنطقة
people
وبالفعل
there,
بكل الحزن بإنهم وقفوا
and
معنا
they
وقفوا
also
بوجه واحد
how they
وقفوا
really
بوجه واحد
stopped.
وهذا
They stood
ساعدنا
with
إنه
us and
نلغي
supported
إنه
us,
نطلع أرقام
which
لكن لو بده
we
يجي يزورنا
stopped
حدا
being
من
treated by
خارج
numbers.
المنطقة
But
هون
if someone
معنا
would
إنسان
visit
قوي
us from
صعب
outside,
يكون
is
دخل الحافز
very difficult. If they
التفتيش
don't have an
بالتعرف على
ID, it's
هويتها الزائرة
difficult. If they want
للمنطقة
to
خصوصا
introduce
المنطقة العربية أو
herself
السيادة
and they
بهاي
don't
الرقم
have the ID,
بقعد
they can
فترة
their own IDs, they will have to suffer. She might be banned getting in? Or what about women at home and her 5-year or 4-year-old is in kindergarten? Women would be waiting and thinking of them. She wouldn't be focusing. The situation would be difficult. And what about how can I make sure that he's safe, that he won't be attacked by any of those vicious settlers? So this pressure had big impacts on women, psychological impact, and even in terms of international organizations who work in our area. The Zionist government and the Israeli liaison hinders their work because they want to make sure that people leave this area, Palestinian people leave this area, to intimidate them, frighten them, and this is what really destroys us. So this is what they're trying to use to keep us frightened and to leave. They're trying to cleanse this area from us, this Solidaridad. I don't know if you ever heard about it. It is the only settlement where the settlement is there within, in the midst of our community. The Boya area, they've started it with 7 caravans, then it started to expand, and it's like it has 3 entries. The 3 entries are half checkpoints. I am a teacher at the mosque. Let's say I finished my class and I want to go back home. It's like 10 meters, but there will be a checkpoint. Now the checkpoint is closed, but then I would say, but I need to go back home. I see my home in front of my eyes. They would say, no, there is an Israeli official that's here, and when he finishes his visit, you wait for him until he goes back. It was January. It was so cold. I stayed on that on the checkpoint, and then I had to go back to the mosque to wait. And it was until evening. Imagine the feelings I endured. And so my reaction, what do you think? I thought I will be resilient and I will wait, and we will have projects, and we will meet together, and to encourage others to visit us, even our daughters. If someone went to they don't families don't like their sons to come to marry girls from Solidaridad because they're afraid that they will lose them. And if a girl would so this is people, our youth cannot marry from outside our area, and some people have really, it was a condition that if he were to marry, to live outside Solidaridad. But after they've seen how we were so very much committed, a girl would get back to live there, and even transferring the furniture to this area, it's so suffering. We don't have cars. We walk and walk. We carry bags, we carry heavy things, regardless of the situation. We have to walk. It's a big challenge. And when I'm telling you, it might sound much. I tell you about the suffering of children, bedwetting, they wake up from at night from nightmares. They would come in with dogs just to intimidate students going from school. Even women were used to wait until their men would come to escort them. So this is something so much. I cannot really brief all what we suffer in these few minutes, but I would like to say that we are very supportive to each other. Any small attack might happen to anyone, everyone would come for support. And I thank all organizations, and mainly ActionAid, who done a lot, which helped women to regain their trust. There is some economic support, there's something, and even in our meetings now, we try to joke with each other. But now with what's happening, the work that we do. How did we improve ourselves? We also, Mariam Abu Turki has also a psychological counseling center. She helped us a lot. Also the Red Crescent, I'm a volunteer in the Red Crescent. They've held lots of activities which had a very good impact on people. And when you talked about 1325 and we tailor-made, we don't acknowledge any resolution or decision. We do everything for ourselves. Even what we do is from our belief that we are the real people here, the citizens, and it's our right not to give up. So all what's being done by the occupation, and you know, is the biggest proof, as you've heard. It's called Shuhada Street. Since the Crusaders till now, up till now, we are there and we are still there. Tailor-made is called the Tal Resilience and Stability. Thank you very much. Thank you, Huriya. Thank you. It is our duty as organizations, and our colleagues have that the UN resolutions and that are not implemented or not recognized. We salute you for your resilience, and thank you for being with us. And I will leave the floor with Suraida. Suraida from Alianza, she will give the floor. Suraida, thank you very much. Thank you all. Do we have time for questions and answers, or shall I conclude? Shall you conclude? And
ما سلمناش على سريدة. أهلا سريدة، ما شفناك.
حلب دكتورة إن شاء الله بخير. حلو نشوفك حبيبتي، وأنا كمان شكرا. يعني بعتذر من الجميع أكيد إنه مش رح نقدر مداخلات.
I do apologize that we will not have questions and questions because of the technical issues, but I would like to brief this, and we'll start with that to thank each and every one of you who accepted this invitation. Thank you. You were with us in your mind, in your spirit, and in your heart. Each and every one of you who spoke out, who said something, implicated who we are. We are the password, the secret word is that resilience, and that's determination. What's happening from the Israeli practice against Palestinian people and Palestinian existence is something old and new, and it's more aggressive than ever. But yes, that we are insistent that we will, and persistent that we will continue. And those who listen to you, listen to the details of your lives, and you represented all of us. But at the same time, all of you, without any exclusion, you ended your contribution with saying the word hope. So it's that hope is there. We and you were, we will always remain here. The situation we're in and the status we're in, it's good to say, to call it, to give it its name, the right name. It is an colonial settling occupation wants to get rid of us, and we are fully aware that this is what's needed, this insistence that they have to eradicate us, but and wipe us out, but our and who and also all of you mentioned the accountability and ending impunity. What impunity? Impunity for someone who would know what they're doing. This is the question mark that we want to ask. What impunity? What is meant by impunity? And sanctions that were imposed on others, that they're not imposed on Israel. So what we ask when we Palestinians want to conduct this, and there was the BDS and accountability and so on. This is where we were labeled as terrorists. Many of the concepts need to be regained. Again, I would like to say that hope, that the spirit, this is that what we do, this is the persistence that we have, not Alliance on Law or ActionAid, also others who know what they're doing. We will continue, and we will always try to open such topics on more on an international level. We need international advocacy to be organized so that we will raise the voice to our people. And thank you very much. I will not take longer. There's a lot that can be said, but we have taken a lot, and I would like to conclude here that every word of hope that you've ended your contributions and will be our hope for the future. Thank you very much.